Hello, I'm Nicholas Hogan. My presentation today is going to be discussing the coverage of bread mould over 3 different types of white bread. I hope you enjoy it. I decided to do my science experiment on this subject because at home we use 3 different types of white bread. Those different types being some bought from Woolworths, which are the store-bought bread in the experiment. We also buy some of our loaves from Brumby's, which represent the bakery bread in this experiment. And the last type is the bread we make at home. I wanted to discover which of the 3 breads would show the least amount of mould coverage on the surface area in the allocated time, which is 7 days, which will hopefully lead me to discover which of the 3 types are most likely to last the longest amount of time. Now I'll explain a little bit about mould. Mould is a fungus that is able to grow on different fibres and plants. It is commonly thought that mould grows in damp and dark locations. Mould is thought to travel through the air as spores, which are attracted to the environments explained just then. Mould is thought to initially be able to gain access into bread prior to the bread being baked. This can happen if the mould spores are able to land on flour that is then used to create the bread, or whilst it's being made in the dough. Once mould is in an adequate environment, then it will begin to spread. This is performed by mould eating the building materials that they come into contact with. So things such as the fibre of bread itself, the mould will begin to eat that and slowly grow. I believe the experiment was reliable because the results showed no outliers and they all presented similar data. The experiment was valid because it was designed to measure mould coverage, and that is exactly what the results have reflected. The independent variable of the experiment was the different types of white bread used. The dependent variable was the percentage of surface area of the bread covered by mould. The environment, the way of collecting the data, the containers used, the times of measurement were all controlled variables. There are 8 different materials I used for this experiment. The first is 9 sets of petri dishes. The second, 3 even slices of homemade, bakery and store-bought bread. The third is masking tape. Fourth is a permanent marker. The fifth, a transparent grid marker. The sixth, a knife. Number 7 is a pair of scissors. And number 8 is paper. The method used was, at first, the homemade loaf of bread was baked. The second, the bread from Brumby's and Woolworths was bought. There were then 3 even slices were cut or taken from the 3 different types of bread. 4, those 3 slices of bread were cut into circles so that they could evenly fit into the petri dishes. Number 5, the dishes are taped shut with the masking tape and are then labelled. Number 6, each dish is placed in the same area of the pantry. And number 7, the transparent grid marker was used each day to measure the coverage of mould on the surface area. All the trials that were recorded showed the common trend that given time mould will grow on all of the 3 different types of white bread. The store-bought bread showed that it takes the longest for mould to appear, and it had the least amount of surface area coverage by the end of the 7-day trial period. The bakery bread demonstrated that mould was able to cover the most amount of surface area in the allocated time. The home bread had similar results with the bakery bread, except that the bread had a slower growth rate of the mould. There is not much difference between the 3 different types of white bread used in this experiment. There is, however, a rather large difference between the store-bought bread and that which was made at home and bought in the bakery. The average quantities are similar in all 3, however there is a small difference in the sodium levels between the store-bought and the home and bakery. There's approximately 100 milligrams per 100 gram more sodium in the store-bought bread. Salt does have a relationship with the mould. Salt is able to dehydrate mould through osmosis, so the more salt that is present in the bread, the longer it will take for the mould to spread. This helps to explain why the store-bought bread is able to last longer before mould starts to form on the bread, and why the percentage of overall coverage on the surface area is less. There are a few things I would have liked to have changed at the end of the experiment. The environment that I used to conduct my experiment was the pantry in my house. As a result of this, I'm not the only one to use it, so the doors can easily be opened and the lights were easily switched on and off. There's also air conditioning in my house, and there is a draft that does pass through, so this could have easily affected the results of the experiment due to the temperature change. I also used circle samples, which made it easy to fit into the petri dish, but unfortunately made it quite difficult to get an exact measurement with the centimetres squared marking guide I was using. Next time I'll prefer to use a square sample or a rectangular sample, which would make it much easier in getting more exact measurements. Next time, if I were to do this experiment as well, I would like to measure something else, such as what environment is better used to prevent mould.